And welcome to the WealthTech Founders Lab. This is for WealthTech founders who are stuck raising capital, stuck getting traction, and not knowing where to turn. Today, we're going to talk about the readiness gap. In WealthTech, traction is often a costume. Pilots, LOIs, great meetings. The market rewards what survives scrutiny, not what sounds promising. So, today, the first topic to kick us off, Joshua, let's talk about demos. What do founders get right about demos? What do they misunderstand about demos, and what comes after?
Yeah, I mean, with demos, it feels good because I'm in front of someone that I could have a chance to sell. Oftentimes, though, those demos become so much about, we get caught up in all the things that we've done and all the features and those things, and they tend to move real fast. And so we get real stuck in what it does in the minutia. And at the end of the call, oftentimes the person can't really recall what happened or how easy this is going to be. What's my time spent on this? How is this going to be actually implemented? So the time spent on the call can be, you can even have a great call with someone who is, let's say, an early adapter. If you've got someone that has an early adapter type mentality, they want to be on the cutting edge of things, and they love to talk about details with you, and you love talking about details with them, and you get into the weeds. Oftentimes, these people, though, can give you kind of a false sense of what's important because they're just so widely interested. And so they seem easy to talk to. And so they can really steer you off of the path. People that are just your biggest fans, the early adapters, because they're just so extremely interested. So it can make you think that other people just don't get it. You really shouldn't be. Early adapters are useful because they can help you to hash out your product, but you got to be careful to balance that with what I call the messy middle, the most people that are actually thinking about, okay, I like this, I would buy this, but how in the world would I adopt this? So it ends up becoming a cycle of, I don't know how I'm actually going to get this through compliance, or how I'm going to get through this through my workflow, or how I'm going to train my people. Even with those people that seem like they're going to be early adapters, the people that give you the best feedback, but also lead you into other little rabbit trails that distract you from actually what's actually going to take to make this something they can buy, and especially something that the market can actually adapt.
Man, this is great. I just am I've probably seen over 1,000 demos in my career in WealthTech after 19 years. And I'll tell you, the most often, it's a good analogy, this theater, or maybe showing up and throwing up. But the founders think when they're demoing a product, they need to show you every single feature it has.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, a big mistake there is trying to show a robust sort of feature set in order to promote the idea that you really understand the problem. And they're trying to demonstrate their expertise as a product owner or a product development manager, and the fact that you conceived this product with all of its features and buttons and capabilities. And let me show you one more thing. And I'm telling you, that is just losing it. You're losing attention. You're losing credibility when you end a 30-minute or an hour-long meeting continuing to try to add more things into the demo. You need to have a conversation. You need to understand what the other side is interested in looking at. You need to check to see what questions they have throughout the whole conversation. And so, I think this is why a lot of deals die after a demo. And kind of like the other side is just like, gives you kind of one of those non-answers, kind of one of those, let's just stay in touch sort of an answer, because, they're not thinking about adoption. That's what you said right there. That you need to land the plane on how this potential buyer is going to actually use it. They got to get themselves in the seat of using your product and think about what it looks like to implement it within their organization. If you don't get them there, you don't have traction for actually getting them to the next step. So what's next? So what can they do to fix this? Or what's the right way to think about whether you're ready relative to a demo?
Well, first off, when you're thinking about a demo, it's who are you talking to and what do they care about? Because we demo a lot of different people. Demos are not demos. Demoing something to someone who is, let's say you're selling to a financial planner. Well, first off, is this person actually doing the financial planning, or are they marketing themselves as a financial planner? Then they have a paraplanner who's actually going to do this. It's a very different conversation.
Yeah.
And is this person someone that we're calling the director of financial planning, who's not a CFP? They're kind of more like someone who handles our technology stack, but then they're also kind of a director of operations, and all of these different things are informing how a demo is landing on people. So is this something that is their main thought that, am I going to use this? Is it, do I have the capacity or someone else has the capacity? Is it diligence? And what is their attitude towards diligence? What do they even mean by that? Because a lot of times your story can collapse under due diligence because it is something that they think is repetitive or redundant, and it's using the same language. This is one of the things that's so hard, Marshall, because our brains are trained to dismiss data. We want to categorize so we can dismiss. So you're working with these two opposing forces. Is it's got to be familiar enough that I know where to categorize it, but also unique enough, novel enough that it sparks intrigue and actually continues to keep our attention. So when we think about these demos, landing the plane here, we tend to just think of, what's our demo look like? My job is to get through the material. My job is to get through most of the material as possible, because the features and benefits sell themselves. But many times I hear it sells itself.
I always just think, then show me your sales.
Exactly.
But often they're not there. You brought up something really important. It's knowing who you're talking to. Pitching the owner of an RIA versus the head of financial planning or the planner themselves. 3 different pain points, 3 different goals, 3 different don't touch my stuff. The CEO is thinking about the P&L and growth and margin and efficiency metrics. The planner's thinking, I don't want to have to redo all the plans already built in the last system, and don't move my stapler. That's a caricature, but my point is, they don't care what it costs. They want to know what it's going to do to mess up my world. And if you don't know who you're talking to, you'll mess that up. Okay, so next, talk about pilots. Okay, so early stage founders are usually very excited about pilots, more excited than demos. So tell me a little bit about what you see happening with pilots and some of the confusing signals that founders get during or after a pilot.
Well, sometimes pilots can be just a way this is the dark scenario, I guess, is sometimes pilots can be used for a firm to learn about what you're doing for free, that they're just getting research that now they get to go build it themselves. Lots of horror stories happen around that. I think also a lot of this, it makes us feel like we're chosen before we have to be judged. So it can kind of feel like momentum, but without really building proof. It makes us confuse having their attention with having their commitment. And those two things are very difficult. The other thing that I think that really bothers me about pilots, and again, I'm not anti-pilot, but this is what you're going to be careful of, is it allows us to postpone the hard conversation. Who owns this? Why now? Can you make enough progress in this that it feels inevitable to continue to, is this going to be rolling downhill or is it rolling uphill? So I feel like that pilots in a lot of ways can be kind of like a comfort blanket. They're warm, but they often don't build business. And are you using them to avoid closure?
Man, all the emotional aspects of this, one, makes me think of a lot of dating analogies that probably won't go there. But there's a lot of emotional acceptance that you're getting at that founders get from pilots, but postponing that problem, determine the relationship, the DTR of the dating analogy is, what happens when a founder says, okay, this has been great. We've been hanging out a lot, going out on a lot of dates, but this is either going somewhere or it's not. And the form of that for founders is you're either paying for something or you're not. And the old saying goes, you value what you pay for, is a true statement. And it's true for founders. You've got to grow the traction. But ultimately, if you don't get someone to pay for what you're selling, venture capitalists won't believe that it has a big growth opportunity. Getting people to use things for free, while may give you some insights, you might get some research benefits that as a venture investor, I'll go, okay, you're getting some insights. But if you can't convert that, then the pain isn't there, or they have another solution, or they won't adopt change. So they're doing R&D theaters, what I see a lot. You got to be careful of this with corporate venture capital groups. They will send their CVCs out to identify who's doing what, to do some pilots or POCs. And by doing that, you're basically doing a free R&D project for that corporate to see the ins and outs, what works and what doesn't. They'll ask you for lots of insights about what the buyers are saying. Ooh, this kind of RIA likes it. Ooh, this kind of investment advisor likes it. Ooh, this firm is taking note about this feature. All of that could be the latest product roadmap coming out of the product development group of that corporate as well. So there's a lot of dynamics here that working with corporates that can get you sideways as well.
One of the things you kind of were talking about several times is I'm gonna use the word traction. We hear the word traction thrown around. We've got traction, we've got demos are traction, and pilots are traction, and all these different things are traction. So maybe we should slow down for a second, Marshall, and you tell us what traction means, what it means, and also then what is not traction.
Traction is sales and it's revenue. There's really no substitute. In B2C spaces, maybe it's active users, maybe it's downloads, other spaces, they have other forms. In B2B, SaaS WealthTech, it is revenue. If you don't have someone paying you for it, it doesn't exist. It can't be tracked. It can't be scaled. You have no idea if it's profitable. You have no idea what the price point really is. The amount of times I've seen a projection that is on a pre-revenue company who says, small RIAs will pay me this, and medium size will pay me that, and really big RIAs are going to pay me some number, and it's totally made up, and it's six figures, and it sounds juicy and amazing, but they have no proof. And so the proof only comes from sales contracts and revenue paid. And until you have that, you're not going to be able to raise money from venture capitalists. I think that there's been a shift. It used to be that you could raise a seed round with a PowerPoint deck and some good-looking founders that tell a really good story. And for a while, when there was more money in VC funds than there were founders who had a good story, maybe that worked. Those days are over. And I'm not even going to get into what Claude Code and other things can do to build a product, but revenue is the thing.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of things that the founders lies they can kind of tell themselves, but ultimately, what maybe are a couple of questions that investor questions that really founders can think of that's going to force them to the truth fast?
Yeah, that's a great one. I like to always focus on one, it's revenue. What's your ARR? Signed ARR. Don't tell me about a proposal. Don't tell me about you. The guy gets back from his Ireland trip next week and then he's gonna sign it. It's signed, provable, contracted revenue. That's ARR. Actual booked revenue is another important figure, which can differ from ARR. You need to know the difference between ARR and revenue. And for some VCs, they're going to be very hyper-focused on ARR only, high gross margin, scalable, yada, yada. Whereas other VCs may have a more nuanced view. In general, the CVCs are going to be more nuanced and all over the place in terms of what's important to them. Whereas the traditional VCs are going to be very focused on revenue traction, gross margin, a big TAM. A little bit of a difference there. But essentially, I like to really look into the pipeline. Show me your pipeline. Show me how many times you met with them. Show me when you met with them to help me understand what you think the enterprise sales cycle is going to be. That's usually one where I catch people who don't understand a thing about enterprise sales when they tell me their sales cycle is going to be like 3 months in enterprise sales. the vendor management department doesn't even answer their email in 3 months. These are kind of the questions I ask, even to understand how ready are they to do enterprise sales. Give me an answer on your enterprise sales approach. What's your sales stages? How do you grade your pipeline? These are the questions I'm really going to start digging into to gauge whether or not I think this founder can take this business to $1 million of ARR and higher, which is kind of that Series A-ish traction point. So a lot of my questions, if you're following, are about the sales capability of the founder. Don't tell me about the salesperson you're going to hire that's going to take you there. I'm judging whether you are the go-to-market founder that'll take us to $1 million in ARR. After that, lots of ways to grow. If you can't get the business to 1 million of ARR, I'm not investing, and I don't think others should either.
That's fantastic. Quick ask for the watchers, viewers: like this, subscribe it, subscribe to this, share it with a founder, someone who's celebrating pilots as if they're revenue, and have a little fun with them.
Yeah, that's your trigger. That's your trigger. They tell you they just had a pilot. You're going to say, oh, well, I got to send you an episode.
Exactly. Links are in the description if you're interested in the WealthTech Founders Lab Growth Diagnostic. Marshall, one of the things I see here is that you kind of brought out was the founder team and the sales chops of it. A lot of times I think we're seeing more people coming in from the whole market's being redesigned with AI and jobs and things. So there's a lot of technical people entering the market and becoming founders, have dreams of becoming founders. Lots of very intelligent people that maybe they tend to just be hyper focused on one area of the market. Sometimes they're not even from wealth management, but they're going into wealth tech. And oftentimes this can be some different ways they don't quite speak either at the sales level, at that positioning level, or they just don't understand the landscape of wealth management or wealth technology in general. But and you mentioned the ability of founders to sell. Can you speak more about that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways people think about this. One is like the solo founder model. If it's a solo founder model, I'm deeply in the camp that founders got to sell. You can't hire a salesperson, you've got to sell. And that's how I, as a CVC, would be thinking about their ability to get traction. If they can't sell, they haven't demonstrated that they can sell, they don't like selling makes them uncomfortable, it's just kind of DOA, dead on arrival. There's another train of thought with a co-founder model. So two people you've got your product, market kind of guru, and then you've got your sales go-to-market guru. I think that can work too. By no means do I live in only in one of those two camps, but that's a way that a product-focused founder can offset or complement, their strengths, is to recruit a co-founder with the opposite skill set. And that works great too, but you got to find that person, you got to recruit them to the team, and that person's got to be a part of the pitch in order to raise real capital. So I think either one can work, but at the end of the day, beefing up your resume related to your sales and being on top of knowing how you grew P&Ls, businesses, units, hit sales goals in prior roles, that's great stuff to have ready for a pitch and demonstrate that you can help grow a platform. So
one more thing here, that's where people tend to think that, well, I'm just going to get advisors and things like this, but stop having advisory boards with people that don't have skin in the game and assume that they're going to do the sales for you because they're on their advisory board. Are you in? I'll put them on my advisory board and then they'll give me introductions and things like that. Like, come on, folks, be willing to think about who you're putting on, not just because they're your friends, but who can give you real feedback. But if you want them to help you grow, put skin in the game for that sort of thing. And also think about the story that you're telling. You may need help in the beginning that you don't need going forward forever. A lot of things for getting something going and understanding how it's going to approach the market, a certain amount of coaching in the beginning to get things straightened out, to understand where you're wasting your time, where you're putting things in. Because oftentimes, Marshall, one of the things I see is people putting in half their time on something that I know won't move the needle. And so a lot of times this focus early on makes a big deal. And I think that's where you're going with the growth diagnostic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no doubt about it. So let's land the plane here. If you're not sure whether or not you've got traction, after hearing this video, you might be really confused, or maybe it's challenged your point of view. Perhaps now you're thinking that it's a mirage. Encourage you to run the WealthTech Founder Lab Growth Diagnostic. That's what we created it for, was to give founders a quick review and response showing you how ready you are, and highly encourage you to take advantage of that.
Yeah. And after that, we also have a way to do a kind of a structured sprint that fixes what we flagged in the growth diagnostic. If you'd like to stay aboard, we do a cohort for that. So thanks for joining us. And don't forget to follow us, share this, and like the episode so we can reach more founders like you.
Adios.